I hope you can see it and then you can hear me well. Okay, yes. Because good. Yes, so I'm Angelica, and because this is a data conversations event, I really wanted to zoom in a bit more into FAIR data principles and how ODISSEI leverages them and also tries to contribute to increase the uptake of FAIR in the social sciences. Just a second. Yes. So FAIR principles for us are key to really realize an open data infrastructure. After all, it wouldn't make much sense to invest on, say, financing data collections if people were not able to find and reuse them afterwards. And we also have a user policy in which users of the ODISSEI infrastructure are required to basically share their outputs in a fair way and therefore, adopt FAIR principles. But before I dive into this, I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes just to lay some common ground on what I mean by FAIR. If you already know this very well, you can also take a short break here. So the FAIR principles is a set of 15 guiding principles that were formalized in an article in 2016. So it's relatively new, but it's already been adopted by many organizations and funding agencies and data providers. And FAIR is a very nice framework for good data management. And the goal is to really enhance transparency and reproducibility by fostering the ability of both machines and humans to find and reuse existing data. What that means from a human's perspective is that data should be accompanied by good documentation. You should be able to understand easily what is in the data and if that fits the purposes of your research. But from the machine readability part, there's a lot of work on metadata standards and machine readable formats that should be used to describe the data. FAIR is an acronym for the 4 main principles. Findability is about being able to find digital resources. Accessibility is not about having everything open, but just about having clear rules of how to access a certain resource. Interoperability is about being able to pool different sources when they concern the same topic. I'm trying to make it very easy and simple. And the reusability is about being able to understand if the data you found is actually good for your own research and you can reuse it. The way I decided to organize the second part of the presentation is to go through a few challenges that we observed in the adoption of FAIR in the social sciences. This comes from experience, from reading. We also had a survey filled among data supporters. So it's different ideas that give me the opportunity to tell you what ODISSEI is doing. But what I want to stress is that this is not an exhaustive list, nor it is meant to be. And the reason why we have this kind of meetings with the community is that we ultimately work for you. So it's also important for us to know what you think. If there are challenges that we are not seeing that you think should be tackled, and then we can talk together and see if there is something else we can do. So the first challenge is that of sensitive data. Many social data sources cannot be openly shared for privacy and security reasons. And one example in this sense is the CBS microdata. That's data on virtually every resident in the Netherlands. So it's very granular, very sensitive. And I think it's in the interest of all of us that this data is only accessible under very restricted and secure conditions. However, because this data can be accessed for research purposes, we want researchers to be able to find and know about this data and decide how they can use them in their research. So there are some ways to work with this. There is work on privacy preserving techniques that allow to either publish or use the data in a secure way, maintaining the privacy of the respondents. And ODISSEI is doing work on that, but that's a bit technical. So if you want to know more, get in touch. But that's not the topic of today. Because the other important bit in this is that metadata, so information about data, actually can, and some might say should be open. And this can be leveraged to really try to make even restricted data more fair. What we are doing with the ODISSEI portal is exactly this. Try to exploit the fact that metadata can be openly shared to build a unique metadata interface, which will include metadata from different data providers across all of the Netherlands. It's important, I stress, it's going to be a metadata interface because that means that the data remain with the data owner and only the metadata will be processed and ingested in our interface. And also we are working with the data providers to really enrich and annotate this metadata so that we can also improve the search functionality. And therefore, a researcher will be able to go to this interface, type in the topic or even the variable they want, and be showed a few results from all different sorts of data available in the Netherlands. Currently, this is only possible if you go to each different archive. You might want to go to DANS or to CBS directly, or to the European Social Survey. There is no way to do it yet, but we are building this to do it all in one place. Another feature of this portal is that we will also be able to incorporate data requests. So within the same interface, you will be able to ask to have access to the data. Your request will be processed by the data provider. And if granted, then the data provider will be able to transfer the data to the researcher in whatever way suits the type of data. So in some cases, it might just be a download function. In other cases, you might need to go via a secure environment, such as the CBS remote access environment or the ODISSEI secure supercomputer. This is a work in progress, but I think it is very exciting, and it is something that it would be very useful for researchers. Another challenge that we have is that we really deal with different data types in the social sciences. Now, ODISSEI is mostly working with quantitative social sciences, so apologies already if I'm leaving qualitative data out of this picture, but this is also part of this discussion, I think. So even when we look at, say, traditional tabular data, we still have lots of differences. If we take CBS microdata, it is tabular data, but it's compiled from all sorts of different sources. Some is from surveys, some is from population registers or admin records. If you take the Netherlands Twin Registry, it's a combination of survey data and biometric information. So they also speak to different communities, like both social sciences, but also life sciences and medical sciences. This panel is maybe the most traditional for quantitative social scientists as I am. It's an online panel, so it's a longitudinal structure. Every year they repeat their modules and collect data among the same people. What I want to stress here is that each of them has different requirements in terms of, say, metadata standards, because it depends also on which other data sets they interact with, which communities they attract. They use different control vocabularies. They may also use different persistent identifiers, because it also depends a lot on what the community around you uses. And in this sense, it's also important for us as we try to build an infrastructure where we try to promote the linkages across different data sources is how to harmonize. It's not necessarily about enforcing standards or making sure that everyone uses the same standards. It's just about being clear about which standards are used. And there's a lot of development also in this area. And one idea is that of the FAIR implementation profiles. That's a tool developed within the GoFair community. And to make it very simple, is basically a matrix in which you have a list of resources that you can adopt to implement a certain FAIR standard, FAIR principle. And basically you have different columns in which a community, so a group of individuals, organizations, actors that share an interest in some data, a community declares which sort of standards they will adopt. Say, with the FAIR principle 1 is about persistent identifiers. You can have DOIs, you can have ORCIDs or ARK and other types of identifiers. In this sense, a community says, okay, I'm going to use DOI, and I'm making this decision public and accessible. So another community who maybe shares interest will also be able to see that I'm using DOI, so maybe they might want to adopt DOIs as well. Or maybe a new community comes in and they say, okay, you know what, the persistent identifiers that are available are not suitable for my field. Let me add a new resource to the list. And in this way, you really try to have a better perspective and an overview of who uses which standards and how you can converge and try to make everything more interoperable. This is not something that ODISSEI is doing directly, but it's like a sister project funded by PDI-SSH, which is called Building a FAIR Expertise Hub for the Social Sciences. It's actually a collaboration between Erasmus Universities and VU, and I actually see that I will have a new project partner from June, and I think he's in the audience, but I'm not sure he wants to be seen now, so it's nice to see you here. And with this project, we really want to increase the adoption of FAIR implementation profiles in social science communities in the Netherlands. Another challenge that we find in the adoption of FAIR in social sciences is really the technical skills. Sometimes, especially when you go into metadata standards and machine readable format, it gets very technical very soon. And this is a knowledge that is not very widespread in social science curricula. So in this case, we can leverage what Suze presented before. So basically the social data science team, those are the science grants, to really try to work on this. So if you have specific needs that require specific technical skills, you may want to come to us. Maybe we can help you with that. With the science grants, you can also have, can you see me? Yes. I'm sorry. Okay, good. My computer was making strange noises. So if you also have specific requirements in terms of software, for instance, the science grant could be a good opportunity in this sense. Social data SODI, as mentioned by Suze, they can help with support, like tailored support for projects, and they're also preparing tutorials. For instance, we have one coming up soon on how to share code, tailored especially for those working in the CBS remote access environment. And they're also doing work on the privacy preserving techniques I skipped I just mentioned before. So if that's something that is interesting for you, you might want to get in touch with them. And just the last challenge I wanted to discuss with you today is that there are many resources about FAIR online, but what we found from the survey, especially among data supporters, is that sometimes it's a bit difficult to find the right resource, and especially that resources are maybe not targeted enough on the social sciences, or that it's difficult to understand what's the minimum standard or what's an acceptable level of FAIR for the social sciences. And for this reason, we want to help, of course. So we want to establish call it ODISSEI Fair Help Desk. And the idea is to be able to pull different parts of the infrastructure together depending on the needs to address very specific questions. This will happen in the form of a web page where we want to point to other resources, because probably we don't need something new. We just need to connect what we already have out there, and also maybe highlight best practices and I don't know, interviews and testimonials. And we also maybe want to establish some consult hours where you can come and really discuss your own specific challenge, and then we can see who in the infrastructure can help you address